The box was lighter than my grief. That was the first thing that hurt. Cardboard, taped badly, labeled only with my name in my mother's careful handwriting, the kind she used on grocery lists, not legacies. My sister walked out with a set of keys to a city center house. Marble stairs, rooftop view, inheritance people dream about. I walked out with what looked like a forgotten attic relic. My name is Lena Hartwell. I'm the younger daughter, the quiet one, the practical one, the child no one worried about because I never made noise. I had just buried my mother and already my family was measuring who mattered more. My father laughed when he saw the box in my arms. A short, sharp sound. He pointed toward the door like I was a guest who had overstayed. "Don't make this awkward," he said. "You got what you deserved." As I stepped back, his shoe pressed against something on the floor, a thin, pale crackle beneath the heel, like brittle paper breaking. A small object rolled free from the box I'd barely touched. It clinked once, metallic and wrong. My father's smile froze. His face drained of color. He leaned closer, staring at what lay between us. And for the first time since my mother died, I saw fear cross his eyes. Not for himself, but for what I had just received. No one moved for several seconds. The object on the floor wasn't junk at all. It was a heavy brass key, old-fashioned, engraved with a symbol none of us recognized. My sister leaned forward, curiosity cutting through her smugness. My father bent down too quickly, as if he'd forgotten his own age. "Don't touch it," he snapped at me, then stopped himself, realizing how that sounded. I picked it up anyway. It was warm from the fall, solid in my palm, far heavier than anything that should have been inside a box of trash. "What is this?" my sister asked, trying to sound casual. My father straightened, smoothing his jacket like control might return if he dressed it properly. "Probably nothing," he said too fast. "Your mother collected random things." But his eyes kept flicking to the key. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Taped to the inside of the box lid was a folded envelope, my name written in the same gentle handwriting as the label outside. My hands trembled as I pulled it free. The paper smelled faintly of lavender, my mother's scent. Before I could open it, my father reached out. I stepped back. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking permission. And in that moment, I understood this box was never meant to humiliate me. The room felt suddenly smaller, like the walls had leaned in to listen. I slid my finger under the envelope flap, slow enough that everyone could see I wasn't rushing, only choosing myself. The paper inside was thick, expensive, the kind my mother never used for ordinary things. "Lena," the letter began. "If you're reading this, you've already noticed how people treat quiet daughters." My sister scoffed softly, but I didn't look at her. My mother wrote about watching me disappear in family rooms, about how I learned to be useful instead of visible. She wrote that she had seen something in me no one else bothered to look for: patience, clarity, and a refusal to perform. Then came the line that made my father exhale sharply. "The key is not for your sister's house. It belongs to something older and more important than property." My sister frowned. "That's meaningless." I folded the letter carefully and looked at the key again. Up close, I could see tiny numbers etched along its spine, coordinates, I realized, not decoration. My father cleared his throat. "This is getting ridiculous." But his voice was thinner now, like control slipping through his fingers. I stepped toward the door with the box tucked under my arm, the key warm in my hand. And as I crossed the threshold, I understood something unsettling. My mother hadn't left me junk. She had left me a path. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I drove in silence, the key resting on the passenger seat like it had a pulse of its own. The coordinates from the letter led me away from the city, past crowded streets, then quiet neighborhoods, then narrow roads that felt forgotten by maps. The destination was not a house, not even a building I recognized at first. It looked like an old brick warehouse wrapped in vines, standing alone beside a small river. The gate was rusted shut, but the lock gleamed faintly, new enough to matter. My heart hammered as I slid the key in. It turned smoothly, as if it had been waiting years for my hand. Inside, the air smelled like dust, paper, and something sharper, history. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, neatly labeled in my mother's handwriting. Her handwriting was everywhere. At the center sat a long wooden table with one open file laid out for me. My name was on the cover. I flipped it open. Bank statements. Legal documents. Photos I had never seen. Evidence of a business my family never spoke about, one my mother had quietly built and protected. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my father. "Where are you? We need to talk. Now." I looked around the warehouse, then back at the file in my hands. For the first time since her death, I felt my mother's presence clearly. Not as memory, but as intention. I didn't answer him. Instead, I sat at the wooden table and read slowly, letting each document rewrite the story I'd been told my whole life. My mother hadn't been dependent on my father. She had been protecting something from him. The warehouse, the accounts, the quiet network of contracts all carried her name, not his. A final folder lay beneath the others. Inside was a second letter. "Lena," it read, "if you found this place, you've already done the hardest part. You chose to look instead of obey." She explained that the city house wasn't a reward for my sister, but a distraction my father insisted on. Something flashy he could control. The real inheritance was here, a small but stable enterprise, built with patience and care, meant for the child who could handle silence without surrendering to it. I closed the folder, breath uneven. Pride, grief, awe, all tangled together. Outside, tires crunched on gravel. My father's car. He stepped in moments later, scanning the space with a mixture of fury and fear. "Your mother lied to all of us," he said. I met his gaze calmly. "No," I replied. "She simply told the truth to me." And in that moment, standing in the center of her hidden world, I understood. This wasn't about property at all. My father walked deeper into the warehouse like a man entering a room he'd always pretended didn't exist. His footsteps echoed against brick, too loud, too certain. "You've misunderstood this," he said, not looking at me. "Your mother was emotional, secretive. She didn't think clearly." I watched him touch one of the labeled boxes, then pull his hand back, as if it might burn him. I didn't argue. I simply opened the final document on the table, a transfer notice dated years before her death. My mother had already moved ownership of everything here into a trust, with me as sole trustee. "Explain that," I said quietly. He turned, eyes flicking between the papers and my face. For the first time, he didn't have a prepared version of events. "You're supposed to stay quiet," he muttered, almost to himself. That was the deal. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, but steadiness. "I stayed quiet long enough," I replied. Outside, rain began to tap softly against the metal roof. Inside, the air felt cleaner, lighter, as if secrets were finally being aired out. My father straightened, gathering himself. "This changes nothing," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I closed the folder slowly, because I had already decided this place, and everything it represented, would never become another cage. He tried negotiation first. Standing beneath the flickering warehouse lights, my father shifted from anger to strategy, the way some men change jackets. He spoke about family unity, about legacy, about how this business would be safer if we managed it together. By together, he meant him in charge. I listened without interrupting, watching how he kept stepping closer to the central table, as if proximity might rewrite legal reality. Rain drummed harder on the roof. The air smelled like dust and honesty. When he finished, I didn't argue. I simply slid the trust documents toward him. His eyes scanned the page, then stalled on one line he clearly hadn't expected to see. No co-management, no overrides. His jaw tightened. "So, this is how you repay me?" he asked quietly. I folded my hands on the table. "I'm not repaying anything. I'm honoring my mother's choice." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he laughed, short, brittle, defeated. "You've changed," he said. "No," I replied. "You're finally seeing me." He turned toward the door, rain slicking the gravel outside. Before leaving, he paused, looking back at the rows of boxes that carried my mother's careful handwriting. And in that pause, I saw something I'd never seen from him before. Not control, not pride, but recognition. The warehouse grew quiet after he left. Rain softened, then stopped, leaving the air washed and clear. I walked slowly between the rows of boxes, running my fingers over my mother's handwriting as if it were a pulse I could still feel. This place wasn't loud or glamorous, and that was exactly why it belonged to me. That evening, I called my sister. Not to boast. Not to explain everything. Just to tell her the truth I wished we'd been allowed to share sooner. She listened in silence, then said softly, "I didn't know." I believed her. The next day, I began transferring the business into a structure that would protect it and me. Smaller meetings. Fewer eyes. A future built on steadiness, not spectacle. My father never came back. Not to fight, not to negotiate. Sometimes silence is simply the final answer. Weeks later, I placed my mother's letters in a single, plain box. Not hidden, not locked, just kept. I realized then that this story had never been about revenge, property, or even betrayal. It was about being seen. And in choosing the quiet inheritance my mother trusted me with, I finally saw myself. Clearly, calmly, and completely.